Can you hear me? Everybody ready? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 8th, 2024 Franklin Planning Board meeting. This meeting is audio and video recorded. It's also on Zoom, and the Zoom call-in number is 312-626-6799 with a meeting number of 9809-1858-252. Before I get to general business, I'm gonna take, I see some people here from the audience, for 147 Pond Street, which is a public hearing for the Tri-Voc School. If I could go to Amy, Department of Planning, the
Thank
letter
you,
we
Mr.
just received.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We received a letter today dated July 8th, 2024 from Karen McGuire, the superintendent of the Tri-County Regional Vocational High School, addressed to our chairman, Mr. Rondo. We are submitting this letter as a formal notification that we are withdrawing our site plan review application for the Tri-County High School project without prejudice. We appreciate the planning board's time and comments during the site plan review process. So we're at the point, if the board is going to accept the letter.
All right, so is anybody here from the Voc online or Zoom? No, okay. Are they claiming, is this going under the Dover Act, the reason being?
They don't specify in their letter, just what they have said in their letter. They do qualify under the Dover Act, but I can't speak for them, so it's what they have submitted.
Just so people understand, I mean, we got this last minute. How about the board? Does anybody have any questions? Because I have some comments. Anybody have any? Chris?
What does the Dover Act cover? What does that entail?
Educational, churches, daycare facilities, et cetera, fall
They can be
under that
exempt from
umbrella.
zoning.
Can be exempt,
Yeah,
not or shall, can be. Can be.
can
Okay.
I'm not a lawyer to answer that, but yeah.
be. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
Bob, any comments, questions? Beth?
I think my only comment is that I'm a little disappointed in the process. I think the planning board should have an opportunity to discuss health, welfare, safety items in front of the public, but I guess with that being said, there's not really much of a choice whether we accept it or don't. And if the public has any comments regarding this process, I would highly recommend you go talk to the town administrator's office and the school administration about this request.
Good. Jen?
I echo that. I am disappointed to not have the opportunity to continue to review the site plan.
Yeah, and I agree, at the 11th hour for them to withdraw, I just don't think that's a good move. I don't think it's a good move for the town. I don't think it's them wanting to work with the rest of the town. I just don't think it was a right move, especially with public safety. I would like to know who's gonna take care of all the traffic concerns, and that's what our main concerns were, traffic and safety.
Neighbors, letters.
For this assembly that's gonna be going on for 2+ years. I wanna know who's gonna take care of that. And I don't think the town of Franklin should have to send the building commissioner up there, or Beta, every time we have traffic jams, when it's the school's responsibility, in my mind, to manage what they're doing on and off site, even though it's a replacement of a school. So I'm very disappointed with them pulling out at the last minute, so, unfortunately, it's one of those decisions we're faced with, and that's what we're gonna have to live with, but I would just recommend any traffic concerns, any concerns, go right to the building commissioner and go right to the town administrator. And, I'm not happy about it. So, make a motion,
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
yep, so,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Make a motion to accept the letter to withdraw without prejudice.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So,
So just for the audience members, Mr. Chairman, if you don't know what that
Go ahead.
means, is that they will no longer be continuing their public hearing process with the planning board. They've requested to withdraw.
So does that mean that you have no say in what they do?
we have no
Correct.
say.
Correct.
Yep.
So I have no say, you have no say.
You have say, because you can contact the town administrator and the building commissioner, yes. Yes,
just not through this avenue.
yeah, they withdrew off our table, in, literally it's the 11th hour. So, and we just got a letter this afternoon on the withdrawal. But yeah, if you wanna just approach them.
Actually contacted the building administrator, or the building inspector. He had no knowledge of any, I was asking a building inspector who referred me to the fire department, who said they have no knowledge whatsoever of any, blasting that might be taking place. We're at Butters at 373.
Yeah,
Mark, how do you pronounce your last name?
Mucciarone.
Mucciarone.
Mucciarone,
Okay. 373 Mucciarone Road. And,
so all just so you know, all blasting falls under fire department. It's permitted and regulated through that. So any blasting, the blasting company has to file all the paperwork with them, and they'll do a pre and a post, survey. So that way they have the baseline of what it was and what it is after done blasting. So all that falls under fire department.
what the fire department told me is they have no knowledge and they haven't received any
They
applications.
might not have.
No, they haven't filed it
haven't.
yet. That's
They,
all.
they wouldn't know, they wouldn't know yet.
Yeah, they
yet
wouldn't know
until
yet.
they start the site work.
What they said is they know it probably about a week and 10 days before the blasting
So
takes
how are
place.
we supposed to know?
It's up to the fire department, really, at our level, the planning board level, we can't answer those questions.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Dover Act, and the letter did not say the Dover Act, but you're saying the Dover Act says basically that they can do whatever they want.
No,
No,
No.
not necessarily, it just,
No,
it falls under the umbrella. It's a very elaborate act. If you read it, it's what, I don't know, 70-something pages or
Yeah,
whatever.
you
Sure
can-
you are.
you can-
But-
You can look it up very
Yeah.
easily on the internet to find
Yeah.
out what it is, what falls underneath the Dover Act.
Okay, you've been very kind to me over the last many, many months. And as you know, I'm the one that has two sides of my property.
Yeah.
And then the one,
Mhm.
both the soccer field and the football field,
Mhm.
within 25, 30 feet of my property, so. Building commissioner, town administrator, you're saying, do they have, what names?
So the building commissioner is Gus Brown,
Gus Brown.
I'm sorry.
Gus Brown,
Gus Brown, okay.
and the town administrator is Jamie Helen.
You can get all their numbers on the town's
Okay.
boards and
Um,
website.
So basically, sorry, we're out of luck is what you're saying.
No, you're
No,
not
I'm
out
not
of
saying
luck,
that.
we are,
We are.
unfortunately.
You're not, you still have an
You,
avenue.
you actually have more say at this point than we do, and that's the sad part of it all.
Yeah, it's that for me too, because you guys are great. Okay.
Yeah, so, but we didn't want you sitting here waiting
Yeah.
for something.
I appreciate
and,
that.
and going through the whole line of business first, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again for all your
So
support.
does that essentially leave
Us up the
you
tree.
collectively without due process over this?
Correct,
Correct.
it's no longer on our agendas. This vote removed it from the agendas.
Wow.
Okay, but any questions, defer right back to building commissioner and town administrator.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
It was nice to see you in person.
That might be the first time we've heard that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually a first, I gotta write that down.
Put that in the minutes.
Nice to see you in person,
Yeah.
I don't think we ever get that, so, thank you.
Yes. Okay. All right, so we'll, our next item of business, we'll go to general business next. This will be a Form H for 515 West Central Street. Amy, if I could go to you, Department of Planning, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep, 515 West Central Street, it's a site plan that was approved on February 7th, 2023 for a new childcare facility. They've, have submitted a final Form H to seek an occupancy for the building. Beta has provided a review, an observation report.
Okay. Matt, you out there?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Hi, Matt. Matt, if you could give the board an update on, where we are with this?
Absolutely. So we did visit the site on June 26th, and we do have an observation report that was submitted. The list is fairly short, so I think I can just go item by item here. Something pretty minor, they just need to adjust the curb stop box for the domestic water service. It was buried out there, so they just need to bring it up to grade so it's easily accessible. We did note that on the back side of the building, one of the pole-mounted luminaires has not been installed. It was our understanding there was some ledge in the area and they were unable to install it. Although there's no pedestrian or parking access back there, we did just recommend that the engineer of record confirm that lighting will still be adequate on the rear side of the building. The electronic access gate was not completed at the time of our observation. It did look like a crew was preparing to finish that off, so I would defer to the construction team to give an update on that status. Detectable warnings, that is noted on our report, is not being installed. However, we have received some updated photos showing that those were installed, so that is off the list now. One thing that's a bit more of a concern is discussions with the contractor. It appears that some of the drainage infrastructure from the Midas site that connects over through the development was either in poor condition and did not seem to be operating. So right now, the engineer of record is working on a solution to that. They did submit a field change plan to get that back up to speed to Mike Maglio and myself today. I think it's going to be done, and it's just really a matter of where they're reconnecting the system back in. But I do expect that to be pretty straightforward as well. And then the last thing to note is, although this is not directly related to the site work itself, we did observe the infiltration basin at the front of the site does have about 2 feet of standing water in it. When we've been on site, it seems to be continuously full of water, and it may be an indication that it's not functioning as designed. This infiltration basin does take water from all portions of the development, so we did recommend for the engineer of record to analyze that, because if it's not working properly, then the stormwater system is not providing the treatment for the development as originally designed. So that is it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, good, thank you. Before I go to the board, can I go to Mike, DPW? Mike, do you have any comments, concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't. Matt pretty much nailed it. I agree with everything he said about all the items on that list.
Okay, good, thank you. I'll go to the board first, because I had some items. Chris? Yeah? Mark? Comments?
If the infiltration basin in that manhole isn't corrected and we approve, give the endorsement for it, what recourse do we have then?
Well, that's why it's gonna go for partial.
Okay, all right.
So
That would be
let
my
all the
next
items get corrected and they can come back, but yeah.
That would be my only thing. Thank you.
Chris?
Mr. Chairman, I recall that we had a discussion potentially about the retaining wall several months ago. I just didn't know if that was remedied to your liking.
I have that in my notes too, yep.
That's the only note I had.
Beth?
Nope, just, items that need to be finished before final is released.
Okay. Jen?
I'm trying to remember the original site plan. Were there supposed to be signs on the other side of the drive that said do not enter for the emergency access, around the back side of the building? I know there's pictures of the signs and the initial approach to that emergency drive, but I'm wondering if there are signs on the return side. Just to prevent people from going back there or trying to get out of the parking lot that way. I honestly just cannot remember
Okay.
the flow of,
Okay.
so I guess that,
The applicant here? Applicant's here?
Yes.
If you just wanna approach the mic and give your, company's name and your name, please.
Sure. My name's Michael Hassett. I'm here from the applicant, and I'm the engineer of record, Gary and Halnon. So to answer your question about the entrance, so it's actually gated on if you're looking at the front of the building on the right-hand side, both the approach from Wendy's and the T intersection with that access drive on the right side is gated. So the only open end is on the left-hand side when you first enter the site, and you can turn left to go around. But the right-hand side is gated closed.
okay, so it's gated from the Wendy's side too?
Yes.
Okay,
I
sorry.
believe,
I
yes.
see on the plans that there's a gate at the new daycare parking lot side.
And I do believe there's also signage there saying do not enter, but the gate is an even stronger message
Okay.
not to enter.
Okay, thank you for
Good.
clarifying, yep.
All right, I had a few blitz. The access gate, obviously, that needs to be completed.
And you said that work was being completed this week? Wednesday morning, so that's being installed this week.
Okay, so that'll be on the balance of it. How about the handicap detection pads?
Those have been installed. Matt Crowley referenced that he received pictures of that
Okay.
just now, so.
Matt, you comfortable with them?
Yes, yeah, I would note that they're the ones that, they appear to be the ones installed over the concrete. So obviously they'll just need to make sure that they're maintained so you don't get any edges sticking up.
Okay, no trip hazards with them or anything when you apply them over? Okay, the drain manhole, did you guys try backing that out? To try to see if you can get it to work? Get a
I
back
believe
truck
that
up there?
we're leaning to that approach, so
Okay.
I had a discussion with Mike this afternoon, discussing one approach, and then that led to discussions with the contractor. And it's looking like we're gonna actually just, repair the damaged manhole and the disconnected pipe. So it's gonna be, less intrusive than we had first thought on that repair, so, but we'll work with them to make sure everything is satisfactory
With Beta,
to
yeah.
Mike and Beta.
Okay. Infiltration basin, that's a big one for me. We gotta make sure that thing's fully functional, whether it's yours or not, but
Mhm.
you guys are gonna have to, you guys originally designed it too, Gary and Helen did, so I would say.
I believe so, yes.
I would-
I
I
wasn't
would go
personally
back.
involved, but I
Yep.
can look into that.
So I would definitely look into that one.
I would note that it shouldn't be groundwater captured by any of the wall drains or other sub-drains on the site. Those are connected to the wetlands, bypass line, and so that should be bypassing that basin, but
Okay.
we'll fully investigate that and,
Okay.
provide an update to the
Alright.
board and Beta.
And then the last one I had was the retaining wall, as Chris brought up. This was one of the ones that we were trying to keep an eye on. I wanna make sure that we have, all the signed documents and reports from the structural engineer as it was being installed. Pictures if so, dates, et cetera. I wanna make sure that's signed off by the structural engineer of record who designed it. And I was in the Wendy's parking lot the other day, and I noticed, and once again, I'm gonna bring it up, the existing retaining wall on the adjoining property. I would want you to look at that to determine whether that was compromised during the excavation of this
So,
project. Just
I
if you have-
recall that being brought up.
I brought it up, yep.
Over the winter, and we looked at it, and our interpretation of what's going on is it's actually kind of an original wall, and then a cinder block wall was built on top of that. And so that cinder block wall on the top is the part that's deflecting a little bit, but we have site inspection photos from pre-construction showing that it was doing that prior to us starting. And so.
Can you put that in the
Yes,
documentation?
we can forward that
Because that wall's
again, to
leaning.
everybody, so you can see,
Yep.
you can see the
Because
history.
their parking lot sits on that, basically.
I think, yeah, I think it's,
You pull up, their curb
it's retaining
stoppers.
less than you might think, because I think that main concrete wall is still very
Yep.
sound.
Yep.
It's just that
The
top,
CMU.
that ad hoc topper on the
Yep.
wall that
Okay.
seems to be having a little bit of deflection on it, but
Okay. If you
we'll
can-
provide you some images that you can see for
Okay.
yourself.
So basically, I'm gonna make a recommendation, it would be a partial Form H with the outstanding items that we spoke of, detention basin, the gates, the manhole, all the documentation and the signed stamped drawings for the retaining wall. Is there anything else? And anything else if I missed? So I make a motion for basically a, partial Form H for 515 West Central Street. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, our next item of business would be a Form H for 700 Union Street. If I could go to Amy for Department of Planning, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The planning board approved a site plan at 700 Union Street on November 21st, 2022 for a new childcare facility. The applicant has submitted a partial Form H. It's mainly due to the incorrect material used for the curbing, using Cape Cod berm instead of the reinforced concrete. Beta has also provided a comment letter.
Okay, good, thank you. Before I go to Beta, Mike, can I go to you for DPW? Will you, voice in?
Thing was, Jim, we don't have any comments. Beta did all the construction inspection on site, all the utility work that was done within the right of way, utility connections, there were no issues with any of that work, so we'll defer to Beta.
So
when
you're
it comes to
good with
site
everything?
construction.
Okay, good. Matt, you, there, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hi, Matt, if you could give us a run-through, of 700 Union Street, please?
Absolutely. So I think, as was already noted by Amy, they installed the Cape Cod berm throughout the interior of the site. We just wanted to note that they did install the vertical granite curb coming off of the right-of-way, and they do have the curbing adjacent to the sidewalk next to the building. So it's really the internal parking spaces that is the Cape Cod berm along the driveway itself. Most of the other items are kind of punch list type things. They need to install the drop-off pickup signage. They have a construction dumpster that is located in the emergency or in the fire access drive on the west of the building. They need to remove the filter fabric from the area drains once the site is fully stabilized. Grass is from poor to fair establishment out there, so they're going to have to get that established as the weather becomes more favorable. They need to touch up some of the riprap out there. They still need to do the exfiltration test on the grease trap. I don't think that was done to date. One thing that we did note, it wasn't an issue with conforming with the plan, but we did make a recommendation through the engineer of record that they may want to reconstruct the weir berm from the sediment forebay. It currently has some curbing through it, and it's retaining water, as evidenced by tadpoles being present in it. So ideally, that water is going to leach out through the stone and go into the infiltration basin over time. Also, through the engineer record, the bottom of the infiltration basin was not loamed or seeded, but it does appear to be functioning as designed. So really, it's the engineer's preference if they want to see that vegetated or not. So I think that is it in the big picture, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to the board. Mark, any questions or comments?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, seems like a lot, but that's up to the board to decide. But it needs to be done, but it's partial, right?
This will be a partial, correct, if everybody's comfortable. Okay. Chris?
No, just concerns from you, Mr. Chairman, being the pickup and drop-off signs, but if we're looking at a partial, that's okay, as long as those are up and operational before we go final and people are dropping kids off.
Okay. Beth?
I guess just the interior curbing that was replaced, not based upon the site plan, so is that something we're okay with, or do we want to have them put it according to the site plan?
Oh, no, we want it in, it's just
They put in
They put-
berm instead of,
granite.
so we
Yep.
would like them to do the granite.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so just making sure the last page here says on-site curbing material unless approved by the planning board.
No, we want what was approved.
And as long as, it's a partial, then I'm fine with
Okay.
that.
Jen?
Agree. The other thing that is unfortunate is particularly along the public way that what was supposed to be an ornamental fence got replaced to be a chain link fence. I don't remember approving that. So I guess the question to the board,
Is it acceptable?
whether or not it's, acceptable.
How does the board feel about it? Because there is ornamental on the backside, backside of the building in the pictures on page 7 of 10.
I mean, I think for me, it's more like the immediate, like sort of what's
Yeah.
visible from the street. And even, along the edge of the parking lot that is on the street side, That's all. It's not a safety issue.
Looks like it's a mix of fencing in there. Okay. Matt? What are
Yes.
your thoughts about the mixed match of fencing?
Well, I think that really comes down to, it's a form versus function debate. The purpose of the fence up there is for fall protection on the retaining wall. There's no need for screening of the parking lot because there's not a residential view from that side. They did make the change versus what was on the approved plan, so I really defer to the board on what they'd like to see out there. But from a functional standpoint, it will provide the fall protection from the retaining wall.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Okay. Was that it, basically?
Yeah.
Okay. I just had a couple quick questions. Well, one was the fencing. Two was the landscaping. Want to make sure that can go in, but my biggest one is, how are you guys gonna put your curbing in now that you got top coat in, without destroying the top coat? If you just want to introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good evening, Josh Klein, Stonefield Engineering, engineer of record for the project. So I know a comment made about the list. Overall, there's really, I think, 2 items to discuss this evening. A lot of these items are, pretty minor items. Some have been addressed. I just wanted to touch on, they are, over the next 2 weeks, they're doing the testing for the grease trap. They've already removed the dumpster from the site and done some general cleanup. The hope is, now that some vegetation has kind of set and some of the slopes on site are a little bit more stabilized, the hope is over the next couple weeks to be able to go out there and clean up kind of the seeding and the lawn areas around the site. And that will help kind of clean up some of the other items. In terms of the curbing, a decision was made, from a value engineering standpoint to replace the interior curbing to asphalt berm. So the curbing around the building and the drop-off and pickup area, that is a monolithic concrete curb. So that, that is I think one of the important areas where the concrete is established. Granite curbing remains at the driveway entrance. Again, so the curbing that was proposed in the public right-of-way and then leading into the site was also installed as granite. So the berm curbing, really lies along the driveway area in the kind of along the edge of the parking area in the interior. I think the hope would be to kind of allow that to remain given the concrete curbing that's in the drop-off and pickup area, as well as the granite curbing that was done at the main entrance.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Sure. If you just approach the mic and give your name and...
First of all, I apologize. This is a field all day. I left my bag at home, so I'm more casual than I'd like to be in front of a board. As far as the items that Mr. Klein addressed, I've spoken with the general contractor. I'm with Primrose, just so I was before you guys with the approvals. I'm comfortable that the landscaping will get cleaned up. I've spoken with the general contractor. It's been kind of a tough couple of months between heavy rain and scorching sun to get stuff to grow. But obviously the expectation is going to look very different when it's all established. Another touch on the fencing too. The ornamental fencing we use in the play areas is manufactured by a company called Ameristar. It's an aluminum fencing, especially designed so it's got a certain width, so a kid obviously can't get their head through it. When we talk about fencing to catch a fall, things like that, we felt chain link was a better option from a life safety standpoint. The impact rating on the Ameristar fencing is not the same as it is for chain link. I understand it's not the most ideal setup, but the reason we put it in is obviously to avoid someone getting hurt. So it'd be nice to not have to change that out for something we don't really feel is going to do what it should do. And I wanted to kind of touch on the curbing thing a little bit. I'll be completely honest with the board. I just found out that they had made the change, and it was early on, I think, in the construction process. And just so you understand how Primrose works with our franchise owners and our engineers, is we, design and develop the site, and we go through an approval process with contractors and bid it, and then they go. There is a significant value engineering save by going with concrete berm, I'm sorry, Cape Cod berm versus concrete. Should we have come to the board? Absolutely. And all I can say is we should have come to the board. And I think it was probably 2 weeks ago that I found out about it. I spoke with Amy, wanted to obviously figure out the best way around it. To answer your question, you know, what's it gonna take to replace it? It's pretty significant. Can it be done? Sure, but it's at a pretty high cost, and I think from an on-site standpoint, I know our franchise owner, Mr. Patel, who has another Primrose in operation in the state as well, if it gets beat up or banged up, will absolutely be repaired and will look well. I mean, your other site looks fantastic after several years. So I would just tell the board that we really take pride in what things look like. Had we had this discussion 9 months ago, we should have, it'd be a little bit different. So our apologies on that piece of it. And I think the rest of the things in Beta's report are all certainly fairly minor, and they'll be addressed in the next 2 weeks. The problem we've got is we've committed to several families to have them start as soon as we can. We have a licensing visit this week. The building department has signed off fully in the building. Life safety is signed off. Everyone is signed off except for you folks. So I just wanted to give you my thoughts on that. So I appreciate the board's time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Well,
can I comment on the curbing?
sure, because you know what my comment's gonna be.
I know what your comment's gonna be. In looking at the photos at the entrance, the granite curbing on the intersections, into the roadway there, I appreciate your acknowledgement that you should have come to the board, because you should have come to the board. So, in my honest opinion, I don't think it's worth ripping up the site in order to put in the granite or whatever curbing we had requested. I think it looks reasonable. Had you not put any of the granite in, then I might have a different opinion, but, I mean, I think that it's going through the motions of making them do it just to make them do it, in my opinion. It's not worth it, and leave it as it is. But I'm just one board member of many.
Jen?
I think the fact that there are curb stops in front of a lot of it helps. I mean, it shouldn't, I think I'm mostly a little concerned about areas that are likely gonna get beat up, particularly where cars are taking turns. I'm happy to see the concrete where the majority of the pickup and drop off is. So all that being said, I'm not sure it's worth fully ripping up, and I'd probably have different thoughts if it weren't for the curb stops, but
That's only in a small section.
it's, I know, I mean, it's the drive and it's the
Well,
corners that I'm concerned about.
I mean, it's in and around the trash container and everything, so it's gonna get beat up with plows and whatnot. It's gonna be a long-term maintenance issue for them, so I think if you do it now, you fix it, and you don't have to worry about it in the future. You saw cut it, infrared it back in with, top coat. We'll follow the plan as it was approved and designed. How's everybody? I don't wanna make them have to do anything, but unfortunately, this only set precedent for ones moving forward. So, if they came to the board 5 months ago, said they had a problem with it, they could have approached it at a different time. But at the 11th hour, once again, asking for forgiveness. It just, you know,
Yeah,
that's just me.
I have the same opinion as Jen, and I just feel that the same, Mr. Chairman, that if it sets not a precedent that maybe they were hoping to set, but it creates the opportunity that you can go through with a plan that's not as we requested or proposed, and all will be forgiven. I don't think that's a good thing to have.
No. And that's what I'm afraid of down the road too. And I think in lieu of the changing of the fence and a couple of the other things, we let the fence go, and We just ask that you put the curbing in as it was called out, follow the plan as designed. No,
No, I don't,
okay,
you guys wanna take a vote?
so, just make a motion, partial Form H, but the curbing will be installed as per the original drawings. And we'll let the fencing stay as it is.
And on the fencing, Mr. Chairman, I feel that it's a better solution for safety,
Sure.
so I'm okay with that.
Yep. Yep.
For the same reasons, the granite curbing over the berm.
And this is only for partial, because they'll have to make sure they get all the, all the landscape in. The head wall needs to get cleaned up, the manhole behind it, the washout area, so there's still a little bit of work, but this will be just for a partial anyway, so.
Chairman, may I ask a question before you
Sure.
finalize the motion? Are there areas in this, I know that it's not what we approve with the curbing, and it's not something we wanna set forward as being, we approve it, you do what you want anyways, I understand that. Are there areas within this plan that we would like to see the granite curb, and perhaps other areas in which they can leave some of the Pequod?
I don't wanna, I don't
All
wanna,
of it changed
yeah,
to-
I don't wanna Swiss cheese it.
Okay.
I just assume,
Just a
just,
question.
you know what I mean? I was thinking the same thing if it's behind the parking stops or whatever, but you know what? Now we're picking apples off different trees, that's all. So, make a motion for the partial Form H to be released, but we leave the fencing as it is, and the balance is the landscaping cleanup, head wall, and we'll just change the curbing as per the drawing. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Chair,
Whoop,
I appreciate the board's input. I guess the question I have, and maybe it's more for Amy, obviously we're trying to, we'll be at the building department tomorrow, but could we put together a schedule for that work? I mean, obviously, you know, we've got to order,
100% sure.
yeah, so, I mean, we understand and acknowledge it, I just don't know if we.
This will get in the building, as long as there's no life safety
Zero.
situations.
Yeah,
You'll be able to get the business up and functional.
wonderful.
And then the balance of the work will come in with a scheduled date, and we can work from there.
Very good.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our next, excuse me, our next item of business will be an endorsement for 19 Cottage Street. Amy, Department of Planning, this is just the sign off, obviously,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
we
they
already
can-
approved and,
Yep, so they, the planning board approved the site plan, for them on February 5th, 2024. They've, with the special permit, they filed a certificate of vote, there's been no appeals, so it's been filed with the registry of deeds, and they have included the certificate of vote on the plans.
okay. So make a motion to endorse 19 Cottage Street, do I hear a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then we'll go to our meeting minutes, and if everybody's read our meeting minutes from May 6th, May 20th, and June 3rd, if anybody has any additions or deletions, if not, I make a motion to approve meeting minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. We'll go to Liberty Way. You wanna do Liberty Way first, Amy?
Hmm?
So we'll just open up, this will be a continuation for a public hearing for 15 Liberty Way, and I believe they're looking for a continuation. How about we go with the September 9th date? This one, all right, so make a motion to continue 15 Liberty Way till September 9th. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our next item would be another continuation, which would be for 488 and 496 Summer Street. This is a special permit site plan application, and they're looking to be continued once again. Amy, do we go August 19th or September 9th?
August 19th, they've requested.
Okay, so I make a motion to continue 488 and 496 Summer Street till August 19th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now the fun stuff. Okay, our next item of business, this would be a initial public hearing for a zoning bylaw amendment 24-906, 24-907, and 24-908. Amy, if I could go to you at Department of Planning, if you could
Make a motion to waive the public
Re-
hearing,
Second.
reading,
reading?
sorry,
Yep.
not the public
Yeah.
hearing.
Second,
Yeah,
just the
the
reading.
reading. Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have Brian Brunner online as well. As we all know, that the MBTA communities came out with coming up with anything within a half a mile of a train station through the state, requiring a certain amount of units. Our unit count is 1,883. We felt that we met that with our C1 district and our GR5 district. The downtown commercial district, they are requiring, they first required no requirement of multi-use. They did come back and say you can have up to 25% of multi-use in your downtown commercial district. However, you have to waive parking for commercial use. And the commercial use of the buildings is only up to 25% of the building. Going through the Economic Development Committee as well as through the Town Council, our current zoning for the residential portion is 1.5 spots per unit. Through going through Economic Development and Town Council, they've come back with a recommendation of one parking spot per unit. So that's what's in front of you tonight. We've also added, we've never had a definition for the mixed-use development. I think it's pretty simple, but I think it just clarifies anybody trying to develop mixed use that is there. We also had to update our 185 Attachment 7, Part 6, to include that mixed-use development regulation on that schedule. Those are kind of the housekeeping items. The main item is your 24-207R with the parking regulation for the commercial use in the downtown district.
Comments, questions? Mark? I'll start with you first.
No, I have no problem.
Okay, Chris?
Amy, to clarify, you said 25% commercial, is that a minimum or a maximum?
Maximum
But there's no
per
minimum?
the state.
Do we have a minimum in the bylaw that's been proposed?
We do not.
I think that's something to consider. We've seen far too many projects come through with not sufficient commercial space.
It's a
just to check-
requirement for multi-use.
Right,
So they can't go to 0, but it is a requirement for multi-use.
but they could have a 5 square foot closet and call it commercial, and that would satisfy the bylaw, right? So I think having some minimum standard, I think is appropriate. Additionally, I'm agreeable to the commercial parking being 0. I don't like going to 1 for residential. I prefer to 1.5. If anything, a tiered per bedroom or unit mix, I think is appropriate. So if you have all 1 beds, 1 parking space. If you go 2 beds, 1.25, 3 beds, 1.5. I think that's fair and equitable and provides enough parking for the residents that are gonna live there. Even though it's a transit-oriented half-mile from the commuter rail, it's not there's still a need for vehicles. So I think those are my overarching comments.
Okay, good, thank you, Chris. Beth?
I understand the need for the change for non-residential uses are exempt. It's a requirement for MBTA communities, so I understand that. What I don't understand is the change from 1.5 to 1 parking spaces for the residential units in downtown commercial. I feel like we had a pretty lengthy period of discussion on this with the EDC combined with planning board members, and concluded that 1.5 spaces was where we're gonna stay, and now all of a sudden it's being changed to 1 again. So I don't understand how we keep coming back to this discussion when we had a discussion, and here we are again. I'm curious what the rationale was and where this came from all of a sudden, having gone through the Franklin for All, I don't even know, a year plus process was it? And discussions, disagreements, and everyone finally agreed, a compromise was 1.5 parking spaces. And now it's being changed to 1 again. So I don't agree with that, and I appreciate Chris's comments. I think a minimum amount of space, if the MBTA communities allows designation of a square footage for minimum, would be something that would be helpful to have. 'Cause we've seen a lot of projects come in lately that take advantage of the mixed-use component with the very minimum requirement of commercial space in order to make their project work.
Good. Go ahead, John.
To add to that, I mean, I think I brought up the parking shouldn't just be a blanket 1.5. It should be tiered based on number of bedrooms and size of unit, really. Like a studio is very different than a 3-bedroom apartment in terms of who you're accommodating. And I think that averaging out might actually, in the end, require less parking. So why would we not implement a more of a tiered structure that results in an average, which would likely, I would assume, result in a lower parking requirement. For residential, agree, commercial, no need. There's never an issue downtown, and we want more businesses downtown. There are plenty of places to park. I wonder if instead of a percentage or square footage requirement for commercial, or the additional use other than residential, is there a way to define a linear footage requirement in the spirit of trying to activate the street front, of bringing that use kind of to street level? You know, if you have a 3-story building and all you get is the commercial use tucked around the back with just the door in the front or on the side, and you get, you know, garage doors proposed on the street front, or only the residential proposed on the street front and the commercials tucked away. It's not, I don't think, in the spirit of mixed use with trying to improve that sort of business-oriented side of economic development downtown. So I wonder if there could be maybe combination square footage and linear footage requirement based on sort of available street frontage and depth of parcel or site to define what that approximate area or range of area should ultimately be per, that's very site specific. So I think everyone's sort of on the same page here.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brian's got his hand up, so.
Yeah, Brian, let me go first, and then you may be able to cap it all off. I agree with Chris, been thinking about this one. And Amy, you and I were talking earlier, I was thinking the 10%, but I think maybe as a bare minimum, we put a 10% minimum rate to a 25%, so we know we're getting the mixed use out of it. We're not getting 50 square feet. And to Jen's point, the idea is to rejuvenate the downtown with mixed use, and the intention was to have businesses basically on the lower level, like a podium-style building with residential units up above. So, yeah, putting an office or the required space in the rear of the building is not suiting the needs of what the town's looking for in terms of the intention of the bylaw, from what I gather. So maybe there's a way we can make the recommendation of, do you want to go to the tiered? I mean, the tiered situation could work in the downtown situation, so do the tiered situation.
That's a good suggestion.
Do the frontage of the actual address for the business side, and do a minimum of 10% up to the 25% of the square footage of the building. So if it's a 10,000 square foot, you get 1,000 square feet at a bare minimum. So you're promoting the growth of business in the downtown. So that would be my thought.
I think Brian can answer some of these questions.
Yeah, and I think just the square footage, I think it's very like site specific, right? Like you might get a super narrow site or really large site, and so the percentages might.
But it's still relative to the building size.
Right.
So
But if a
you don't want
two-story.
30,000 square feet and only have 800 square feet of commercial space.
Yeah, no, I agree there should be
Yeah.
like a minimum.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, anyway, I think
The
people can work through the
positioning,
definitions. I
okay.
think we're hearing maybe that there's the intent of getting the maximum sort of public kind of retail facing frontage requirement
Correct.
associated with that use, that percentage use
Yeah,
of
so
the
it
site.
could be used as the actual frontage of the access of the building, like the actual road frontage. That's what you count it, not side street, not,
Yeah,
say it's a
no,
corner lot.
The defined,
Yeah, the defined, so it'd be the frontage of the building off the main, off
and
the
a
main
corner
road.
lot technically has two fronts.
One would be a
Right.
sideline,
They're both,
one would be a sideline, one's front, so,
anyway, these are all.
yeah,
definitions.
that's okay. But Brian, you wanna chime in?
Yes, thank you. Hopefully I can clarify a couple of things. First of all, you're talking about the residential and non-residential uses. Nothing in these zoning amendments in front of you today changed what we have as far as where a residential unit or a commercial unit, for that matter, can be permitted in the downtown culture, the downtown district. The downtown commercial district currently has residential uses above the floor level. It cannot be at street level. And that's going to continue once if you were to pass these, if town council passes these regulations, that will not change. So the first floor is non-residential. Upper stories can be a mix or it can be all residential. So that's for one thing. And I understand that, this whole MBTA communities thing is somewhat confusing for a lot of people, but we tried to make this as simple as possible. I just wanted, I think it was Beth mentioned, how did this come about? Why are we doing what we're doing right now? So if you go back several months, I had proposed these bylaws and we went to Economic Development Committee. The original bylaws that we went to, they weren't the same numbers. They were A, B, and C at the time. But the second one about the parking spaces that are required. At the time, right now, we require 1.5 parking spaces for residential units and 501 space per 500 square feet of non-residential. So that's what we're required as of today. And the change that we were proposing was to leave the residential units at 1.5. And if it's a total commercial development, there are no residential, they would allow it, it would stay at 1 space per 500 square feet, so there would be no change. But if you have a mixed-use development, which is the reason we put the definition of mixed-use development in with this mix here, if you're having a mixed-use development, you would still be required to have 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit. But the non-residential component would be exempt from that section. So you wouldn't have to have the spaces. It would be totally based on the number of dwelling units on site. And again, the dwelling units would be all in the upper stories.
Sorry, Brian.
We went to
Brian?
the Economic Development Committee. Yes?
Sorry, don't mean to interrupt you. Could you repeat that? You're saying in the downtown commercial zoning district, residential units would remain at 1.5 or would change to 1?
Well, I'm giving you a little bit of history.
Oh,
We had
sorry.
originally proposed months ago. We went to Economic Development, and we suggested that 1.5 stays as is, and that we would have 500 square feet for any non-residential use. One space per 500 square feet. But when you get into a mixed-use development, which is the MBTA community's issue, you'd require the 1.5 parking spaces per residential, and you'd waive the non-residential uses, which would could be almost the whole development, or it could be just the first floor. Regardless, when we went to Economic Development Committee, they weren't crazy about that idea, and we left that meeting with the downtown commercial zoning district is exempt from this section, 195-21B, which meant that residential and non-residential uses in the downtown commercial would not have a requirement for parking spaces. So they went with what we were doing, a limited change to eliminate all the parking in the downtown, all the requirements, residential and non-residential. So we amended it, and the way EDC went to town council. Town council wasn't crazy about either proposal at that point, I guess. So they changed, what they want the change to be is what we have in front of you today, and that is going from 1.5 parking spaces in a resident per residential unit to 1 parking space per residential unit. And the non-residential uses are exempt from this section, whether it's a mixed-use development or or totally commercial. There is no commercial requirement. So that's where we are as of right now, and that's what you're looking at and considering. As for the other 2 bylaws, I just want to note that, like I said, the mixed use definition it's very simple definition. And we wanted to not overwhelm developers with regulation in their definitions. Some communities have some substantial regulation in their definitions. We just went with a very simple, what is a mixed use development? And we added it in the 3rd bylaw, which would be 908 rather, 24908. That just adds it into certain zoning districts where currently it would be allowed anyway, a mix of residential and non-residential. We just added into the use table. So I'm sure I hope I cleared up some of it, but there probably be plenty of questions right now. Happy to answer.
Brian, I think my question was, I guess I'll clarify a little bit, is in order to be compliant with the MBTA communities, in the bylaw change request, 24907R, is it correct to say the only change that we need to make is non-residential uses are exempt from the parking requirements, 185-21B? Item A, the change in residential dwelling units to 1 parking space per residential units is not a required change to be compliant. It's just an extra change that the EDC/town council has decided they'd like to put in place during this bylaw change. Is that correct?
That is for the most part correct, yeah. They the town council, EDC are
Made a decision to change it to 1.
made a decision to change from 1.5 to 1.
But
Correct.
not necessary in order to be compliant with MBTA communities. Great.
No, it's not necessary.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Yep, well, I think that clarified a lot. Jen?
I guess just my only question is, can we go back with a suggestion of changing that 1.51, whatever, instead of having just one blanket recommendation to a tiered system, or essentially a table that people have to refer to? Are we allowed to do that?
Brian,
Yeah, I mean, it's not what's in front of us right now. It's not what, and this is a public hearing, it's not what's been brought to EDC yet. So basically what the board is voting on is what is in front of you. Going back to a tiered, or creating a tiered system is back to the drawing board, and, trying to get that in order. Because these bylaws exist right now. It's really just changing that amount of parking
couldn't
from
that be
1.5 to
amendment,
1.
Amy? Couldn't that just be an amendment
Wh-
to the
what would
to
it
the
be?
bylaw? Yeah, it's a change, but it's not, you're not
Is it
reinventing.
too much of a change outside of what was advertised? Probably.
I mean, it could be. I don't know how you would come up with a tier. This is what's in front of us. I think it's either a recommendation or not a recommendation at this point. But we'd had to create that tier somehow.
Could we
and
reapproach this at a later date without having to go
I mean,
jump through hoops for 8
I
months?
think that we're trying to get this done. The deadline for the town is at the end of December, to try to get this MBTA, process done. We, at this time, don't have anything in front of us for this. It's a zoning change. It could always be tweaked in the future. Should we want to readdress this and we see a concern for it? But I think at like this point, we're trying to get ourselves in compliance. And once we get, if the state approves it and we can get ourselves in compliance, then we can work on tweaks if that's the direction they want to go. I know that Brian has his hand up too.
Mr. Chairman, just in response to that, Amy, I don't disagree. I think it's important that we become compliant with the MBTA communities, which could have easily been done if we had just changed the one item, letter B, to make us compliant. But then you throw a wrench into it by making a bold move and changing things that we've already talked about for several months. So
Yep.
I'm not sure where we're coming up with, let's go ahead and just sneak this one in again and move it through. So I think, for me, I don't support the change for the 1.5 to 1 parking spaces in the downtown commercial. I 100% agree with the need to change to be compliant with MBTA communities. Don't think we have much of a choice in that one. And if it were me, if that's all we were voting on, and the definition and the change to the use table, I'd be fine with it. I just have a big issue with trying to put one in there that has not been discussed. And so for me, I can't support the zone change, which is too bad, because we could have easily been in compliance pretty quickly here. So I would just say, if the council and EDC are wanting to change the parking requirements again in the downtown commercial, that it's a separate zoning bylaw discussion, that we all have a chance and an opportunity to talk about with no pressure of having to meet a deadline. So that's how I feel. I support the other 2 changes, but I don't support this one for that very reason.
Well said.
I agree as well. We'll meet the criteria, but we leave the residential at 1.5 as,
Well, tonight we have to simply just not recommend.
we just won't
this.
And I would suggest that we form it in a way in which we say willing to discuss future parking opportunities, but today is the time to focus solely on being compliant with MBTA communities. I think
Would
there's
it-
a lot of discussion that needs to be had about parking in the downtown, and, it's a complicated one. And, we came to a conclusion at one point in time last year, and I don't know why we can't stick with that for now.
Brian, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Because we are really do, with the time it takes to go from a proposal for a zoning bylaw to get it passed, it takes a long time. It takes, as much as 6 months. Sometimes you can get it done in 3 or 4. But if we were to just not go forward with this bylaw, then I'm afraid that we may not end up at the end of the calendar year meeting MBTA communities. For that reason, I would suggest if you're going to, as a whole, for the committee, for the planning board rather, if you're not going to support the change to the residential parking, then I suggest that you propose that you supporting the non-residential as proposed, and that you do not support the residential change. That way, you could put a proposal together that would work because I don't believe I'm hearing there's too much problem with the non-residential change. If there is, I'd like to hear about it specifically. Good.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Sure.
could, Brian, in making a motion to recommend the bylaw 24907R, can we make the recommendation with the removal of the changes to the residential and still make us compliant for the non-residential uses with MBTA communities? Will that do?
Absolutely. You can change your vote to whatever it is. I mean, there've been plenty of times the planning board has made a vote on a zoning bylaw and has not totally supported it, or they would if something would change, for instance. You're sending your opinion as a board. Town council can do anything they want anyway, but they're listening to you as for a recommendation.
Okay, understood.
If you're not support of the bylaw at all, then you say that. If you're supportive of some component of it, you should say that also.
So,
But
would this
I
entail the 10% to 25%?
Yeah.
That's not even on the table.
Okay.
Can I also just, regarding,
I'm good with the odds.
I mean, there's a lot of history going to that 1.5, but there's also like, in the next half a year, going to be the wrapping up of the master plan update, and it feels like there's a lot tied to potentially parking related to downtown commercial zoning district and residential uses, and there's just been so much conversation about that. It feels a little, kind of the cart before the horse.
A little premature.
So, I mean, I would vote to recommend the changes to 24-907.
Non-exempt, I mean,
However, this goes out B1B, except that change, do not recommend the change to B1A. However, that officially needs to be worded. Have that discussion at a later date.
Okay, Chris?
I agree with that. I'm on board with that recommendation. I also want to revisit my comment on the commercial space. I know that we're not talking about sizes and it's not in part of the bylaw, but just to revisit my previous comment and thinking about it, I'd be weary of putting a minimum, because then you're gonna get someone that just puts the minimum, and that doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room to push them higher if we feel it's necessary for the site or the design. So if we have a maximum, great, but if we have a minimum, I feel like that's just the low bar, and that's the aim, as opposed to having a lot of flexibility with this
Yeah.
isn't sufficient, and there's no, well,
Well, we
yeah.
could go 24 to 25% then at that bit. I'm just thinking 10% just as a baseline, thinking nobody's gonna really lowball it that bad. You know, well, I'm
Yeah.
just
Not in front of
giving the
board.
benefit of the
I
doubt.
wouldn't say
but-
that.
But I'm thinking proportion to the building
Sure.
size, is all I'm thinking. So if you get a 10,000 square foot building, you gotta make it work for the residential and for
So
the
that
guy to
could-
have the money back. So 10% would be 1,000 square feet. I think that would be a sufficient proportion for the size of the building based on the mixed use to the residential side. That's all. You're not dwarfing it, is what I'm getting to.
And I think that could be
I
the
guess.
expectation, but
Yeah.
I think putting it in the bylaw hinders our ability
Yeah.
to control the development.
But they
if we
could come
want to.
back with 50
I
square
don't think
feet.
I've ever had
which I
anyone
don't
come
want.
in
And then we
and
can say
only
no.
do more than what
Will
the
we?
minimum
Can
is
we?
required.
I think that's a good idea.
What's that?
I don't think we've ever had anyone come in and do more than what the minimum is required.
Well, I'm just thinking as a baseline to work from, that's all.
Something to discuss.
Is
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's
Yeah.
all. We don't want them coming in with 150 square feet, that's all.
Yeah, and again, I think
Okay.
it's also really tied to frontage. You could have 10,000 square feet but if it's all in the back of the building, it's still.
No,
not serving
no,
its
I
purpose.
agree with you
So-
there too, and I think that would be the
And yeah, residential
intention.
use is required upstairs, but,
Sure.
you know, garages, I mean, it's just very different in terms of what that frontage is.
Mhm. Okay,
supposed to
so,
be.
General public have any comments out there?
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
we
public
can
hearing.
ask, somebody else has the hand up. Is that Brian again?
That's
Brian,
me.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask where we're talking percentages of 10%, 25%, whatever the case may be. Are you proposing at this time or to make changes? Because
No,
that
not
hasn't
at
been
this
discussed
time,
in any
Brian.
way, so I just,
Nope, not at this time,
No, but we should entertain it moving forward though.
at some point in time.
Yeah, sooner than later.
And
I
that's
would
also part of the master plan
Yep.
updates
So,
and recommendations.
That could also be part of the tiered system too, if need be, based after the master plan committee for future projects coming forth.
And there is a
if-
public hearing Wednesday night.
So,
Perfect
okay,
timing. There we
so
go.
maybe,
Yeah.
we can do it that way.
Great.
Anybody in the audience have any questions or comments? You're all confused too? Don't feel it.
Fun stuff.
So do we have
Some.
to take these individually, or is it the whole
Yeah,
block?
just- but First, make a motion.
Well, yeah, we wanna do it, Beth? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
make a motion to close the public hearing for zoning bylaw amendments 24-906, 24-907, and 24-908.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to recommend zoning bylaw 24-906 changes to the definitions to town council as submitted.
Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Then make a motion to recommend zoning bylaw amendment 24-907R, with the removal of, the decrease from 1.5 parking spaces to 1, and accepting of the item B, B1B, non-residential uses are exempt from this section. So we do not support item B1A, but support item B in our recommendation. Makes
Second.
sense.
Make 'em all right? Yes, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And one more, right?
Yep.
Make a motion to recommend as submitted zoning bylaw amendment 24-908, for changes to the use table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I hope that came out the way we
I think it
voted.
Yeah.
I think it did. Did.
It did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Last item of business tonight would be the, excuse me, the initial public hearing for zoning bylaw amendment 24-913. Make a motion to waive the reading. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Amy, if we could go to you, Department of Planning, if you could run us through this potential change?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a property located at 305 Union Street. We've been approached by a few individuals that are looking at the property. It's currently 5.37 acres. There's couple existing structures there that make up 95,600 square feet, mainly for commercial and manufacturing. With the current zone, it does not allow for any residential use. So we've been approached for rezoning to allow multi-use there. They've proposed several different ideas with some townhouses, with some offices, possibly a restaurant. It would be under the C1 zoning district, which actually we've listed all the items, like anywhere from retail to sales to medical, dental. The housing component would fall under our inclusionary zoning. Should they have more than 9 units, it would give us 10% of affordable housing. I believe really to make this property more feasible, it's been along for a long time, to be able to allow some mixed-use development there. I think that area of the cottage in Union Street, is coming up. They've added some more, they've got the winery over there, and they've gotten some new, retail and some new spaces over there, so, and it's very close to the downtown area. So they are here to be able to rezone it to C1 and hopefully move forward with the project.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I guess I'll go to the board. Any questions, comments? Mark, we'll start with you first if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the idea of changing it to commercial one. I'm still stuck on the one space per 500 square feet of commercial. I don't think, again, kind of limits what we're trying to encourage. I do agree that it's, you know, it makes that property more versatile, but, I mean, we have other areas in town in a commercial one that have little to no on-street parking, and again, I think it becomes an avenue for the applicant to have a storage room, not a real business, unless it has to be, can it be approved by a special permit that we can increase that, or is that kind of cast in stone? That
Amy?
one space per 500?
So a special permit is anything, in C1, it's 20 to 50 square feet per unit. Anything over that requires a special permit by planning board, which most likely would, in most cases, it would. But I do wanna know, in front of us, it's not parking in front of us, it's just the
I realize
rezone
that, but
to be discussed for tonight.
This is just the first of many roadways for this parcel, that's all.
but in general, I like the idea of changing it, but I'm still hung up on that part of it.
Okay. Good. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've seen, a handful or more of great examples of these old buildings getting retrofitted, repositioned, and they come out great, and they become fantastic new uses when you can revitalize them and put new types of business or a residential mix or something in there. So I think this is a good initiative to get started and seeing some growth down there, so I'm all for it.
Okay, good, thank you. Beth?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think this is an example of a positive zone change for the town, so I'm really hopeful that the true mixed-use project will result with this zone change, so I think it's a good idea.
Jen?
Resounding yes. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. This is what we need in this area. So,
Okay.
great.
Can I ask you one question? Of some of the proposals that have come in, what's the proportion that they're talking about between commercial, well, business to residential?
So,
50-50, 75-25, what's the thoughts?
well, I can't answer that, I've only seen one, honestly, it's really
Are they leaning
just
heavy
a
to the red-
concept,
Okay, I'm just asking.
plan at this point. Right now, it doesn't allow any residential, so I think this is huge beneficial that they wanna add the residential. So I can't answer that, we don't have that in front of us right
I
now.
was just curious, that's all. No, I'm in favor of a reuse of the property like this. I think it could help that area down there, and my biggest comment was about possibly traffic potentially with the amount of residential units, that's all. That's why I was asking. But we gotta move forward at some point in time too, though. So, do I hear a motion?
Public.
Oh, sorry. Anybody in the public, any comments, questions? No one in Zoom land? Nope.
Make a motion to close the public hearing for bylaw amendment 24-913.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to recommend approval of the zoning bylaw amendment 24-913 for 305 Union Street as submitted.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Good. General business?
Yep, I just have one more, we're all done with all the public hearings, right? So I just have one more housekeeping item. We were looking at the August 5th meeting, for the planning board. We're gonna have 2 members absent that night. Right now, there was only 1 public hearing on, and they've already, requested to be moved to the August 19th meeting. So I'm seeing if the planning board wants to take a vote to cancel that meeting altogether. I think we can fit in our next, we have July 22nd, is kind of a full agenda. We have room on the August 19th, and then the September 9th meeting as well for any upcoming hearings. So just seeing if the board is in favor to remove that off the schedule.
I don't think any of us will disagree that canceling a meeting is a tough choice. But the one item that will need to be moved, do we need to open the meeting that night and move it?
We
or-
do not, if the planning board cancels the meeting.
Okay.
I will, send out an email to the abutters, I will put it on the calendar tomorrow, saying that this meeting is canceled, so they'll know almost a month ahead of time, that the meeting is canceled and will not be held. So that anybody checks the website or anybody inquires, we can notify them ahead of time, so that they know this far ahead of time. That's why I wanted to bring it up tonight, not
You
the
can
next meeting.
Put a note canceled and then the date that the other ones are continued to.
Yeah.
Make a motion to cancel the
August 5th,
5th meeting.
planning board meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Amy, I have one piece of general business. And it goes back to my favorite building across the street. Have we heard anything?
I've sent your letter twice, and I have not heard anything back.
Can we request them at one of our next meetings to explain their thoughts and what they're gonna do to fix it?
You can, if that's what the board wants to do.
Yes.
Please,
Okay.
thank you.
I have one more thing. Amy, I thought this was gonna be your
Yeah.
last thing.
I'm giving it to you. You guys
Okay.
are working hard.
Well, it's questionable.
Lob
So,
some football to you.
I don't even think anyone's online anymore. But the master plan committee is holding a public hearing on Wednesday night in which all of the subcommittees are going to present their draft goals around the various topic areas that are making up the master plan update. So highly encourage the public to attend and give feedback and listen in. 6:30 p.m.?
6:30, we'll be present here, we'll be on YouTube, Franklin TV, Zoom, so many opportunities to attend in whatever way you'd like to attend. Yes.
6:30
Great.
Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to say, great job to the 4th of July Coalition, the carnival, very close to my house.
Ditto.
Mine as
Ditto.
well.
So everything went well, there was no
Oh, yeah.
issues, it seemed to be well attended, so I think it was a great event this year, a success, so just a great job to that group there, and I know it's a lot of volunteer work, so just a super job there, all the planning, the DPW getting the common all cleaned up and waiting for it to get cleaned and aerated and
I know,
reseeded,
I know.
and that'll be great, but just a great job overall, it was a great event, even with the heat and the weather, as weird as it was, it seemed to be really successful, so just a great job.
Good point. Good point. Anybody else?
I have, we're gonna talk about housekeeping. Is there any, with 230 Central, where they had the steel, there's a lot of, the grass has grown quite high. Is there any way of asking that they
Claim it?
clean it up or maintain it, or?
Can ask the building commissioner to do a site visit?
Just that kinda looks kinda.
Cigarette out the window, next thing you know, you got a bonfire going.
Just, I don't know, it just doesn't look,
Representable.
that's all I have, but thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, did that come out wrong?